in the late summer of 2021, I bought the Maschine Plus, and my first few months with this device were kind of a roller coaster of emotion. I had really good experiences and I had really bad experiences, right? And so the good was that the sound quality and the workflow of this device, when it was working properly, were unparalleled. Like, I'd never used a device that felt like this, that worked like this by itself. And then the downsides were I was getting crashes a lot. I was getting crackling a lot. And before people type in like, oh, were you hitting CPU? No, I was really careful about the CPU because I watched a lot of videos about this thing. And that's the thing I really want to stress is I did my research on the Maschine Plus. And what my research really didn't show me was that this thing was really prone to some serious issues. Crackling, having issues reloading projects after I saved them, having issues loading any projects at all after booting it. Sometimes you would boot it and it would just get serious crackling and all kinds of problems. And I was targeting about 60 or 50 CPU. I was being careful. I was deleting extra effects from groups. I was doing the things that you kind of have to do to make this thing work by itself. And even with all of that, I was still getting problems. And the thing is, I paid $1,400 for this device. And so I had a lot of feelings about it. I would tweet at Native Instruments back when I was still a Twitter user. And I would be like, hey, are you working on this? Are fixes coming? And they'd be like, yeah, this next update should fix it. And I'd download the update and it really didn't fix it. And it was infuriating. And so I made a video that you may have seen. It's one of my more popular videos. And that was a review of the Maschine Plus. Thumbnail, I'll show it. It says Maschine Plus, a tragedy. And I want to talk about that for a second because the reason it was a tragedy is that it was supposed to be the chosen one. This thing was announced like right after I bought a used MC707. And the second I saw it, just the reveal trailers and the posts and blog posts about it, I was like, oh God, that is clearly the device I want. This is clearly the machine, no pun intended, that would do everything I want to do with Standalone. And so going from that high hopes, even reading, okay, it's using an Intel Atom processor, it only has 4 gigs of RAM, it doesn't have a battery, all that stuff, I was still really excited. I was ready to work with the limitations. And so I worked within the limitations of this thing, but I kept hitting the bugs and I'd paid full price for it, US dollars. And, I'm not rich, like $1,400 is a lot of money for me. And I did it because I believed in this product because of how it had been advertised. And then I had these issues. And so I don't want to rehash too much, but just to say that this is not a I was wrong video. I stand by the review I posted when I posted it. This is a they fixed it kind of video. This is a with time and reflection and many updates. I feel differently about this device than I did when I made that video. And because people are still watching that video and commenting on that video, I have felt like I need to make a follow-up to talk about where I'm at with this device now and how it actually stands in 2022. So let me be clear. Native Instruments is not asking me to do this. I don't owe them anything. They arguably don't owe me anything besides making sure this thing works because I paid money for it. And that's true for all of you out there who bought one. I think they owe us a working product. And I think that it basically is that now. I'm not saying there's never any problems anymore, but most technology has small glitches from time to time. That's basically how computers work. That's basically what my day job is dealing with that. What was unacceptable was the degree to which this thing was exhibiting problematic behavior until about the last 3 to 4 months. I would say for the majority of this year, since the most recent updates, the last few of them, I've had a much better experience. And now people commented a lot, oh, well, did you replace the SD card? Because it's just the SD card. They ship with a bad SD card. I did end up replacing the SD card, but it did not solve all my problems immediately. It was not just the SD card, but also, we should talk about that for a second. The fact that it was common knowledge that the SD card that shipped with this was so bad it could cause all those issues, that's not okay. We need to talk about how that's not okay. You should not have to buy an additional SD card for a $1,400 device that comes with one. They need to make sure they're shipping with a proper card that you're not going to need to replace, that really is big enough to house your libraries and all that. So yes, putting in a new SD card sped up the load times, gave me more space. And I understand that every element of a product is finding the balance between cost and capability. But if a core central feature like the shipped SD card is that bad that everyone in the community is like, oh, you got to get rid of that, dude. That's the problem. Don't do that. Okay, so enough ragging on Native Instruments. But that is just to say that, Mick Benjamin's reached out once and said like, hi. After I made the video that was like, can Maschine Plus be saved? I got a little bit more positive outreach. Really kind folks like Jeff Gibbons reached out. Ave McCree even commented on that video, which was awesome. Even if he was just like, yeah, I think they'll be fine, which is true. I think they will be fine. But anyway, shouts out to Jeff. Shouts out to Ave. Huge fan. But yeah, Native Instruments emailed like once and was just like, hey, I don't even remember. It was just like a hello. And then I never heard back from them, which is also fine. I work a day job. I buy my gear. I make the videos because I care about them. I am not owed anything, and that's totally cool. If companies ever want to work with me, I value that. Like, I want to talk to them. Honestly, it would be a dream of mine to just sit down and either film or even not film, just talking with the folks who made this device and who work on it, because this is a next generation standalone groove box. I think it's worth saying that like this is the most compelling standalone groove box in my opinion. It hits all the right boxes for me as far as what a piece of gear can do. And I want to talk about that. So one point I brought up in my original Tragedy review was that it was unacceptable that this didn't have a battery. And I think I was wrong. I got some good comments. They're like, standalone doesn't mean battery powered. And those people were right. They were right. There is a difference to this experience, just not having to have it plugged into anything else. I mean, the wall, I guess, but not having to use a computer, but having the power of Massive and FM8 and Reactor and a few other instruments, plus a bunch of machine groups and expansions. That is powerful. I'm already almost home all the time anyway. And so it is just beneficial to not have to use a computer. That standalone nature, whether or not it's on a battery or wall power, is valuable. And it is substantial. And so I was wrong. That is a point where I was wrong. I was already very mad about the totally valid crashing and issues I was having. I don't think this thing needs to have a battery. Because here's the thing. This thing is like really portable and light and small. That is a plus. No pun intended. But that is a pro, right? The balance they've made of size and portability and power is pretty good. I do think it should have a better processor, and I do think it should have at least twice the amount of RAM. I'm worried that those two factors are why it doesn't run Absinthe and why it doesn't run the Play series and why it doesn't run other more powerful plugins. I'm imagining we'll see a Mark II of this thing someday. They've been pretty clear they're trying to improve this thing so that the people who bought it don't feel like they wasted their money. And to be frank, that's why I'm making this video, because I think they did that. I think they made this thing good enough that it's worth what I paid. I think it should be cheaper, but also most music gear like this is in this price range now. Prices are going back up. Inflation is a thing. And so I get it. I would probably pay $1,400 for this again, which is the first time I feel like I've been able to say that. Do I think it would be cooler at $1,000? Yeah. I feel like the Maschine Plus, the Akai Force, and the MPC Live 2 should all retail for $1,000. I think those are that's the sweet spot for that device, but that's not the market we're in. And also everyone's dollar is different, right? Inflation aside, everyone makes different money, has different money, yada, yada. I just want to say that I was wrong about the portability equals standalone thing. Like, it has to have a battery. My friend Kamali pointed out that not having a battery means that it's never going to degrade and have another component you have to replace. So hypothetically, this is a device that you could pick up used in 10 years, like a DX7 or something. And it would you just plug it in and it would hypothetically work. Now it has Native Instruments login and all that, so it's a little more convoluted than just a plug and play synth. But assuming they keep their online portal active, right, like the ability to log in or remove it down the line, you don't have to worry about the battery failing or needing to be replaced at any point because it doesn't have one, similar to the MPC-1. Along with all that, in the time since I posted my video, Native Instruments has been a little bit more clear about what types of battery packs they support and what type of power you need to supply this thing with. This is the Maschine Mark III ripcord cable. It was finally back in stock a month or two after I made my review. And so I bought this. This is a random battery pack I just had. They don't sell them on Amazon anymore because the company was one of those companies that was like, hey, do a review and we'll give you I don't know. There was a whole controversy. You can look it up. I don't even know if this thing meets min spec on what Native Instruments says should power this thing, but it's worked for me and it's been fine. I don't use it a ton because, like I said earlier, I don't leave my house very much. But knowing that this kind of setup can work, and if you get a better battery pack, it'll run longer, and you can feel more confident in it. Knowing that, I think that kind of also solves that problem. Between the fact you don't have to worry about like the battery degrading over time and you can use an external, the only pain point I have is it would be cool if Native Instruments at least made a proprietary cable you could buy, like preferably like the jack to USB-C, so you could use a more modern like PD USB power bank with like a USB-C port. That's a nitpick, but it would be cool if it like shipped with a cable you could use like that. And hypothetically, if it included a battery bank, that would be interesting. But I actually kind of get why it doesn't make sense to make a proprietary battery bank when there's so many battery banks on the market. But having a cable would be cool. So maybe in the future iterations, they could ship a ripcord-like cable or just a power cable that is, this lock-in power cable to USB-C. I think that'd be cool. So I think it is standalone. It is standalone, and I was wrong in my review to say it was not standalone. That is, people pointed that out, and they were right. I spent a lot of my original review comparing this thing to the MPC Live 2, and I do think Akai has made a really awesome platform. I think, they continue to improve it with software updates and add more instruments and add more features. If I was going to make one last comparison, it would be that I really hope Native Instruments improves the vocal suite type stuff. I just think they should wholesale be inspired by what Akai has done with the MPC and the Force with Vocal Suite and use some of their plugins or add something like a basic auto tune, like a real-time pitch correction, just some basic vocal stuff that I think would really push this to the next level as far as being an all-in-one device. But with all of that said, this is my favorite Groovebox. This is the one I actually use the most. And that's, I think, why I felt like I have to make this video. I have the Maschine Plus, I have the MPC Live 2, I have the Akai Force. I also have multiple MIDI controllers to use with Ableton. And Ableton's been my primary DAW since like 2011. When it comes to actually making music, not just for this channel, but when I sit down and make my albums, to make my tracks, to, just create, the two devices I've been going to for the last almost year are Ableton, that's almost always my first, and the Maschine Plus, more so than anything else. I recently got the Polyend tracker. Shouts to Polyend. They gave me a discount in order to make some videos. I love the tracker. It's right here. That is now my second most used Groovebox, but that's not what this video is about. Maschine Plus, the reason it's the one I go to is because everything I make with this sounds good. Like the internal synth sounds are next level. When I said this is a next generation standalone device, that's what I mean. So the very reason why this thing can sometimes feel underpowered is the same reason why it's better for me personally. When I sit down to make most of my music, I am not just sampling in and then chopping up and making a beat. A lot of people do that with the MPCs, with the Maschine. And if you're doing that, then I totally understand why an MPC makes more sense. The sampling workflow of the MPC is amazing. The sound quality of the MPC is great when you're sampling and chopping stuff up. The reason this is a more advanced device for me is the internal synth engines. So FM8, Massive, Reactor, Monarch, Polysynth, these are not necessarily cutting edge virtual synthesizers in the world of like DAW songmaking and production, but in the world of standalone Grooveboxes, they just beat the ever-loving hell out of like everything else. Like if you stack the synth sounds this thing can make up against anything Akai makes, up against any other standalone device I've used, almost nothing comes close. I feel like maybe the Electron Digiton can compete to a degree with the FM sounds in this, and I'm guessing the Syntact can probably make richer, beefier analog sounds than Monarch, because Monarch is a virtual analog, and the Syntact actually has actual dual oscillator analog synthesizer built in. But everything this thing can do as a package, both from the ease of song creation, taking a simple beat and turning it into a full song in the song view. I tend to work in ideas and like just build different scenes out because that's how my brain works. That's how I build in Ableton. And then when I'm done, I'll put things into song view and then export the stems out. You could really finish a song on here if you wanted to, but like most Grooveboxes, I usually build out most of a track and then move it into Ableton. If I'm going to finish a song, I'm going to finish it in Ableton, basically. And that's worth knowing as well, right? Everyone's use case is different. Me saying this thing is better now is me saying it's better now for me. Maybe it still has big shortcomings for you, and that's okay. Like, we don't have to like the same things, and I'm just a guy on the internet. Like, sometimes people go in on me. They're like, how dare you? I'm like, dude, I'm literally just a dude. Like, you and me are the same. I'm just the one on camera today. If you don't like what I'm saying, okay, like, cool. We're not always going to agree, and that's totally fine. But yes, this has been kind of rambly, so my apologies. But I had to make this video because the sound quality and the workflow, the actual size of this device, the build quality of this device, it is next level, in my opinion. It just is. I don't think there's anything else like this on the market. And I think the fact that like people like Jeremy Blake, aka Red Means Recording, have been really using this thing a lot. Really good producers are really using this thing a lot and getting amazing stuff out of it. And to be clear, I've spent a lot of time with this. I am not a master of this device. Same with the MPCs. Because I use so much gear and because I work a full-time job and because I love video games, I am not an expert on basically any music gear, including Ableton, which I've used for like 10 years. I'm an intermediate at Ableton for sure. And I'm probably in somewhere between beginner and intermediate with this device. But when you look at what Jeremy Blake is doing with the Maschine Plus, when I listen to the sound quality of the songs I make on here, they feel like professional music. This is not necessarily a wholesale comparison video, but why this feels like the box to beat for me is because when I make songs on the MPCs, and I'm using hype and I'm using tube synth and bassline and all the internal synths, they sound thin. There's something about the sonic quality, even when I'm tweaking and building presets myself, but especially with the presets out of the box, even if you follow Pink Buddha's advice and disable the reverb by default and the delay by default that they put on all their plugins, on the presets, I mean. Even when I do all that, it's really hard for me to get something out of the box just with the sounds on board that sound as good as the synth sounds on this. Now, drums and samples, like I said, if you're just chopping beats up, it's even, right? In some ways, it's possible the MPC actually wins because it has such a good, vast onboard effects suite that you can kind of turn any sample into anything, right? And so I want to acknowledge that. But the synth sounds, and I'm a producer who I compose in MIDI. I play in real time for the most part. I don't use like a piano roll. I play stuff in with a keyboard or with these really good pads. I think these are the best pads on any device. Because of how I make stuff, this is the better device for me, and it's the best groove box on the market, in my opinion. Your mileage will totally vary if you are just sampling, or if you're sampling and using external instruments and just recording in. Like Bolo, the producer, uses the MPC X, the MPC Live, and he uses like a couple of different, I want to say Roland, like the Phantom series of keyboards. He might use someone else too, but when I watch his videos, it seems like he's using external keyboards with built-in synth sounds and the MPC. If you're doing that, then the MPC makes a lot of sense. You can have the internal hard drive bay, you can have SD cards. It's really good at sampling. It's Akai's DNA. If you're just using the internal synth sounds of a device, which is really how I use these devices, is standalone individual pieces of gear, this sounds better for what I do, which is MIDI produced music with synth sounds, built-in synth sounds. And so yeah, every day, or almost every day, at least once a week, I'm getting comments, likes, and views on the Maschine Plus is a Tragedy review I did. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I meant what I said. And for the most part, I think that was all right, except for it needs a battery to be standalone. That was wrong. Thank you for pointing out that was wrong. But I believe in giving credit where it's due. I think Native Instruments has put in the work, and I think this thing is basically fixed. It has CPU limitations. It has RAM limitations. It does not have every Native Instruments plugin on it, but it was not advertised as having every Native Instruments plugin on it. And again, I just wanted what I was sold. And I think I have it now. I think this is what they were selling in 2020 or 2021. I think it dropped. Yeah, it was 2020 when it came out. I think it's now where it needed to be. Is it acceptable that it shipped how it shipped? Probably not. Like, was I right to be mad? Absolutely. But am I right to also be happy with this device now? I think so. And I mean, this is my channel and my video, so yeah, it's all good. If you've watched this long, you're a champion. Please consider following this sign behind me, liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video. I would love if you checked out my music. And if you are interested in the Maschine Plus or any gear, I have an affiliate link to Perfect Circuit in my description. Buying anything on the website following that link gives me a small percentage. I think it's like 6%. It costs you nothing, except, obviously the cost of the gear. So if you want to help the channel in that way, or if you want to join my Patreon, it's all linked below. Thank you to my patrons, names here. Anyone who joins the Patreon at this point gets their name in the video. Originally, I was like, $3 doesn't, $6 does, but everyone gets in the video now. I wanted to adjust the prices, but you can't actually change the prices if someone's already in it. It's very whatever. If you want to join the Patreon, that'd be cool. Have an awesome week, and thank you for watching. All right, bye.